All right, good evening, everyone. I am so sorry for getting this started late. Right as I was about to click start Hangout earlier, my computer crashed on us, or crashed on me, and I had to restart it, and then tried restarting my laptop just in case I needed a backup. So got two of them going here. Thank you for being here tonight and for being patient with us. So I'm Jennifer Rosado from the Mobile Computer Science Principles Project. And Chinma, you want to say hi? Chinma, do you just want to say hi and introduce yourself? Whoops, I think you muted yourself instead of unmuted.
Hello, my name is Chinma Uche. I'm a high school teacher at Craig Academy of Aerospace and Engineering. And I'm a co-PI of the Mobile CSP project that was at Trinity College.
Thank you, Chinma. And Cassie?
Good evening, everyone. This is Cassandra Broniak. I work as the data specialist with Mobile CSP.
All right, fantastic. And I think folks, I see, have already been making some comments on the YouTube live watch page. We're going to try to have a pretty interactive evening tonight and ask some questions and get some, get some feedback from you through the live chat there. So if you're in the agenda, I've got the questions posted there, and we're going to, I'll prompt you as we go through, and when we hit those questions, if you need to look back at them, you can take a look at them in the agenda there, and I'll read them out loud for folks. So this evening is really just a focus on some ideas and concepts around some of the pedagogy that's used in Mobile CSP, and to touch base with you about what's going well with that pedagogy and where you've got questions or where you're struggling with it. So I've got a couple of slides that I'm going to share just really briefly before we start asking some questions and talking through some stuff. So I'm going to start my screen share right now. All right. And the slide deck is linked at the top of the agenda if you're trying to find the slide deck as well. So just a little bit about some of the goals of collaboration in relationship to computer science, and some suggestions for, whoops, I missed pair programming there, but some suggestions for pair programming and Pogo. It's some of the collaborative activities that we use in the course, and then to focus on some growth mindset feedback and ways that you can talk with your students about mindset. So first of all, I wanted to point out we don't explicitly link the curriculum to the K-12 CS framework or CSTA standards, but it is very much aligned with it in the sense that the curriculum in the course matches quite well with many of the concepts and practices that are in the framework document and a number of the standards that are in the that were released by CSTA in the standards document itself. So if you're not familiar with it, there is a practice called collaborating around computing. And this is the idea, you know, that we want students to be able to work in pairs and teams, including contributing to a project, for providing feedback to each other, and the reasoning for it being that when students work collaboratively, it can lead to better learning outcomes and better outcomes of the software product. So better apps that have fewer errors, that more people have tested and taken a look at and thought more about in terms of what the user interface should look like and how it will work for more people. So all of those pieces around collaboration are important in computer science. The AP-CSP framework also calls out collaboration as one of the computational thinking practices, and this is a screenshot from the Purple Book of the information around collaborating. So we want students, again, to be collaborating in solving problems, creating artifacts, so creating an app, creating a write-up about their app, being able to share the workload and provide contributions. It may not be the same sort of contribution, but so that they're both contributing to a project, and that we want them to be having constructive collaborative relationships, so that they are not frustrated by being in a pair or frustrated working in their Pogo groups, and then we want them to be able to see that those can be effective tools for them to learn. So that's just a little bit of the kind of background around collaboration in the computer science world, K-12 education around computer science and what we're looking for there. So just a couple of areas that we use collaboration in Mobile CSP. First, we ask that you try to use pair programming with the App Inventor tutorials and projects. We also have some cooperative learning activities in there at various times where students may be doing debate team carousels and think, pair, share activities during class. There's also a number of lessons that use Pogo, which is process-oriented guided inquiry learning, and that's often teams of 3 to 4 students working together. And then students are supposed to be collaborating around their create performance task. So it's woven throughout the curriculum and is a big part of what we want to happen in the classroom. A couple of key points around ensuring equity in collaboration. The reason that we picked a number of these structures is because they ensure that everyone is participating in the classroom. So if we think about, for example, a think, pair, share activity, students get to think to themselves, they pair up with a partner, share their thoughts there, and then they share their thoughts in the classroom. So everybody is participating in that. Same thing with a debate team carousel, where students are in groups of 4. They're doing a writing activity on a sheet of paper where they're sharing like pro and con viewpoints. So everybody is participating in that activity. Some of the other kind of key points or common threads between these are that students have roles and responsibilities. So it's not just that they're thrown into a group and expected to know how to work in the group. They have a specific role and a responsibility within that group for what they're supposed to be doing. Teachers then have a more focus on ensuring that the group structure is working and that students are following it in the classroom, and less of a focus on actually teaching the content. Instead, students are directing their learning around the content through this group structure. And students then get to guide the student more than just talking to them directly through a lecture. So one of the tips that I think I love most that I've heard from other teachers is, say like in a Pogo activity, if you think about when a student has a question, answering that question with a question to help the student dive deeper into their thinking or help them make connections to other areas of the curriculum is a nice way to help guide the student rather than just telling them the answer. All right, so like I said, that's just a little bit of a background around collaboration, why we're doing it, and some key points around it. I'm going to stop my screen share for a moment and go back over to the live chat here. So our first question in the agenda that I have is for you to describe the student, and I'm going to ask you to keep it short because we've got, limited space on the screen for the live chat, but just to keep it short. And describe the student in your classroom that resists working in pairs as far as pair programming goes the most. What is that student like? You had to, say 2 or 3 words about them, 3 or 5 words about them. Describe that student that resists working in pairs the most. And I'm just going to hang out here for a little bit and be quiet as we see some of the things come in. So I'm starting to see a couple. These are some great responses coming through in the live chat. I love seeing this. You guys obviously know your students very well. So we've got some things like, is a motivated programmer, is already pretty skilled. Some students may have some anxiety around computer science, maybe because they're worried about not learning the material, or they're very new to computer science. Maybe there's somebody who's disengaged with the class, sitting in the back, headphones in, just does the minimum to get by. So a variety of students there. I'm going to give you some pair programming suggestions and then ask you to think about how that might address those students. And then if you have questions about, does that address it fully enough or whatnot, you can put those in the live chat. So I realize I have to switch back and forth a lot tonight between sharing my screen, so pardon me for that. All right, so these are some suggestions that I have from my personal experience teaching pair programming in the classroom, as well as a little bit about what the research literature says around pair programming. First of all, I think I tend to, the first couple of weeks in the class, focus on those driver and navigator roles early and often. I also show a video to students about, what that looks like, and try to point out often that this will improve their learning in the classroom, that by working together in pairs and following the driver navigator roles, not just being in a pair together, but really thinking about what the driver does, what the navigator does, and making sure that they're doing following those two roles, that it really does improve learning in the long run. If you're not already thinking about this, I really encourage you to pair students of similar abilities together. That way the student who feels like they have a good handle on programming already is working with another student that is at a similar skill level, and they do not feel like they're slowed down significantly by having to work with a low performing student in the class. That can get into some, I think, difficulties with the pairs and feeling like they're not very balanced. And there's a number of different ways that you could find out students' abilities. One, you could ask them at the beginning of the year to kind of give themselves a self-rating of where they're at in terms of their programming skill. And you could just do it as an exit slip one day. And then the next class period, when you put them into pairs, you've got that information. As the semester goes on, you may have a better sense of it, after some quizzes and some of the assignments that they turn in, that kind of thing. And then you compare them together with closer abilities later on. Another, this is maybe me, maybe you guys are much better about this, but I often forget to tell students to change roles, so I have to set a timer on my phone. So I use that timer to help remind myself and the students that they need to switch roles. I also would suggest that you give students a break from pair programming. We want them to learn how to collaborate, but sometimes students just need a break from collaboration as well, and they need some time to work alone on a problem. So for example, when I teach Mobile CSP, I often have one day of the week that's designated as a lab day where we're doing one or two of the App Inventor tutorials. That's the day that they have to use pair programming. The rest of the times that we go over other lessons, App Inventor lessons or that kind of thing, I won't require them to use pair programming. So it gives those students a little bit more of a freedom in that they can choose to collaborate or not collaborate on those days. If they really like that collaboration option, they can keep doing it. On the days where it's required, then those students know it's only one day that week that they have to do pair programming. The other piece that I think might be a motivator for some students who are high flyers and really see themselves as wanting to pursue computer science as a profession and do it in college, that kind of thing, is there are plenty of people who work in industry and companies out there that require pair programming, require their employees to work together in this kind of a format when they write code. May not be all the time, but it is some of the time. And so pair programming is actually used in industry. And so this is something that prepares them for a future career, if that's what one of their goals is. So I'll just take a moment and I'll stop sharing my screen, open it up to questions. I'll see Cassie, Chinma, if you guys have any thoughts you would like to share about pair programming and some of the comments folks were leaving on the live chat there.
I agree with you. It's something that needs to be taught and something that people work on. You can never be sure that you'll get it perfect every time, but you understand the importance it has for the student. So you continue to talk about the practice, what professionals do, what professionals require, what industry in general requires. That students need to be able to explain their work to others, and to having a friend, a classmate, is a safe environment to practice collaboration, communication, and these are important whether you're looking for a job, industry. So I look at it as my classroom is a safe place to practice skills you're going to use later in life. So explaining to your friend is easier than explaining to the whole class. So you practice and then you move on. It is something we continue. Every year you get a new set of students, so you have to teach it again before so you're never an expert on it. It's something you work on and improve.
Jen, you're muted.
Thank you. I was just saying, I see Ben left a comment where he says that he's got one or more students there who become defiant when you start to have structure in the classroom. That's where I think if you can try to mix it up a bit and say, you know, there are certain ways that we're going to require it.
I haven't had students being defiant, either because at the beginning of the year I spent time on why CSP was created. I talked to them about the difference between my APCSA class and CSP. And CSP was not only because we want to diversify computer science, it was also because industry said they need people who have collaborative skills in collaboration and other things. So I make it clear, and I have a poster in my room that talks about collaboration and all those skills they need. So I spent time at the beginning of the year to talk about this is what you're going to do. This is a safe place for you. It's like I talk about it a lot. And when we bring up anything, I talk about why it's important. So I haven't had students saying we're not doing it, but I have had, like some people wrote, students who don't feel confident about presenting and talking to other people, but they gain confidence because this is a safe place. This is where you can make mistakes. Nobody is going to laugh at you. So they learn that they depend on each other, and because I group them together, so they feel comfortable after a while.
Thanks, Chinma. I think you've done what you're describing is, you know, really taking a lot of effort to set the classroom culture around how your students are expected to behave and what you're wanting for them out of the class in terms of what you really want for them to learn and what computer science looks like as a profession too. Those are some really good points. I did see Ashley also had a comment here about how do you break the habit of not learning the basics with students too, especially the know-it-alls. Do you mean you as the teacher are learning the basics as you're teaching them? While Ashley is maybe typing in a reply there, I see Greg has also posted a question. How often do you rotate the pair groupings? Because I teach in the college, I often rotate, and we only have class twice a week. I often rotate every once a week, basically, the pairs. And I've done a couple of different, you know, kinds of pairings. And then about midway through the semester, I just let students pick their own pairs for most of the rest of the semester.
For me, generally, I let the students choose their own pairs, but if it's not working, then I move you. Mm-hmm. I have the right to, because I need them to acquire some skills. It's important for them and it's important for me. So if their pairs are working, then they'll continue. If it's not working, I move them. But in general, cooperative learning recommends that you move students at least every 6 weeks. So you can look at it after every half midterm. you move them, and every midterm you move them. So it depends on individuals. No, I believe that every classroom works differently. So you look for what works best for you, but you recognize that cooperative learning is good for the students. So even if they don't want it, so teaching it, developing, building that culture is something we work at. And then if you get that culture right, then it will run itself a little.
Let's move on to talking a little bit about Pogo. So this is, while it's not specifically a cooperative learning type of activity, Pogo is along the same veins where everybody is participating in it in the classroom and they have defined roles that they're supposed to be doing. So I have a couple of suggestions for you, and then I'll ask you your question, or I'll ask the question, or look for the responses, which is, what do you struggle with most about running Pogo in the classroom? So there's a couple of Pogo activities, maybe 2 or 3 now in each of the units. Some things that have helped me and have helped some of the teachers that I've interacted with personally. One teacher I know likes to use colored roll cards where each roll is a single color. So facilitator is one color, process analyst is another color, that kind of thing. And so when they hand them out and put them in groups, then it's easy for them to spot by color who's the spokesperson and go to them to ask questions. I also have another teacher that I've worked with who likes to do the colored roll cards, but where each group is a different color. And this maybe goes back to kind of what Chinma and other folks are saying about setting up the groups. As he passes them out in the classroom, he can kind of make adjustments, like he knows who's getting the green cards, who's getting the pink cards, the yellow cards, so that he can put certain students together. So it may look random to the students, but he's doing some deliberate things in the background to make sure there's certain students who are together or not together. The other thing, sometimes I have a tendency to be like, oh, I need a break and take the Pogo time to be sitting at my desk and just kind of sitting back. But I need to remind myself to stand up and walk around and really listen to what the teams are saying as they're working on the activities and the worksheets, because that's how I learn where they are struggling and where we need to do some more review in class or where we need to touch base on something. I also like to, I know a lot of classrooms have a three before me kind of rule where you got to ask 3 other students before they ask the teacher. Well, when you're working in a Pogo group, hopefully they're already talking to other students in that group, but you could have a rule where they have to ask at least 1 other group or 2 other groups before they talk to you. And then I would also suggest that you don't have to review the entire worksheet with the class, but you should pick out maybe 1 or 2 key questions on that worksheet and review them as a class. And then another thing that I like to do, but I find it helpful with Pogo, is just to take a couple of minutes after class and jot notes down about where students struggled, because then I can either come back to that at the beginning of the next class period, or when I teach it again the next time, then I've got those notes right there on my lesson plan that I can take a look at and use to help me maybe better frame the conversation or think of some guiding questions that might be more useful for students about how to think about the topic that we're looking at that day. So that's just a couple of thoughts and suggestions around Pogo. Like I said, I wanted to ask you guys to put in the chat, what is your biggest struggle with using Pogo, and where could you use more help with it? I see the comments coming in. Students don't want to talk to each other, only their friends. Ugh. And that is one advantage I think about being in a college classroom, is that there are fewer people who know each other.
Yeah, I think that's a natural reaction for students. They don't want to talk, even when you're asking them. So, but that's our job to try our best to help them realize that the classroom is a good place to talk.
Yeah.
There are some I'll ask, do you talk at home? They'll say no. So if you, yeah.
One, I see some comments about the roles being difficult to enforce as you are, working in the Pogo activities and around the classroom. First of all, I have to say, Mobile CSP uses Pogo Lite, so that means that we're not following like all the rules of Pogo activities, and so our Pogo rules are often just like tweaked a little bit. So I am perfectly fine with there being some flexibility in the classroom with those Pogo roles and how they work. I do like to make sure that, if I am stopping and talking to a group, I'm asking, well, who is this role? Who is that role in the group? How is your group performing? If this is the process analyst person, are you doing okay as a group? Or is there feedback that you would give me on how your group is performing? So you could be specific there in trying to ask about roles and enforce them a little bit more. The spokesperson one I do rely on a lot when I ask for, let's go around the room and what do groups get for this answer, then it's the spokesperson who's supposed to answer those. And then it's not easy. Well, first of all, it's not easy. We're not using like Pogo every day in the classroom. They've got, 10, 12 lessons total. So it takes a little bit to learn, for sure. Anyone have a good score sheet for observing roles during Pogo so I can quantify individual roles efficiently? I would encourage you to go to a Pogo workshop. They have some great videos where you're asked to watch a Pogo group and then talk about what went well, what did not go so well, who was doing what role. They are, however, like you can't get access to the Pogo videos unless you go to a Pogo workshop or become a facilitator. So not something I can use. If you want to videotape your classroom using Pogo and use that as a talking point that we can share with Mobile CSP, I would be happy to do that. And I see Mike left a comment about, I'll try to do this better next year, but this year it feels like I missed the opportunity to set the stage. I agree. Some of this is the setting the culture of the classroom, and it's okay if you don't get everything right this first year in Mobile CSP, and going back and refining and improving. The first year I did Pogo last year, it was not great either. I've gotten better at it. It's not great yet, but yeah, I feel like I'm in the same boat as you, Mike. So. All right, great comments and questions and suggestions coming through. I'm going to keep on going and talk about growth mindset. So I'll share my screen one more time here. And then we've actually got a couple of scenarios to think about how we might respond to students in different situations. So first of all, growth mindset is one of the lessons that's in Mobile CSP, this idea between growth and fixed mindset, that with a growth mindset, you really truly believe that you can learn something and that you're not stupid, you can become smarter, and that you can become more intelligent. I would say that as a teacher, it takes time to get growth mindset right in the classroom. It's not something that comes right away. And it also requires practice because the words that you use are really important. And so part of what we're doing tonight, hopefully, is practicing some of the wording that you might use with students in a growth mindset way. And then the other thing that I sometimes see is that when you are providing growth mindset feedback, you want to make sure that you are giving suggestions for how they can improve and not just saying, try again. So, oh, you didn't get it right yet. You're going to be able to do it next time, though. Not just that, but taking it a step further and asking them about, maybe how they studied for the test and some suggestions for better study habits, or showing their work and how they might be more organized, and documenting their work so that, you can walk them through the process and give them better feedback on it. So those would just be 3 quick points. I grabbed the screenshot from the Mobile CSP lesson of the for growth mindset that has the you say and you could say instead table, just as a reminder of some of the language we've talked about before. So instead of just saying good job, you can say I can really see your effort in these mini projects. Instead of saying you're a good programmer, those early versions paid off, have well-defined procedures that you can reuse. So real specific feedback there. You don't know how to use variables. You don't know how to use variables yet. And then this is where I'd also say, how do you think you might learn more about using variables, or what do you think you're struggling with in variables, and what do you need more practice on, so that you can help guide them to the next step and where they can get more support for it. So that's just kind of a little reminder about growth mindset language there. So we have 3 different scenarios that I thought we could try to walk through in the chat here. So the first chat question is, let's say that you've got a scenario where a student comes in after class and expresses that they are not able to follow the topic being taught. So what are some growth mindset sort of things that you might say to that student? It is think time. It's very quiet right now. Interesting. I see both Ben and Greg are asking students to make connections to things that they already know. I think one other piece for me is that, as we wait maybe for some other folks to add input there, is to make sure I'm reassuring the student. Yeah, okay, you could share how you struggled and how you overcame it. Another piece for me is making sure that they understand that I believe they can do it, right? That they may not understand it yet, but I know that I have high expectations for them and I have confidence in their ability to do it, and I'm going to help them get there. And then we get to dive into the details about where they're missing a concept in whatever we covered in the lesson that day. And I see Heather left a comment, sometimes talking with a partner about what each other understands might be an idea. I agree. I think thinking aloud about what you understand and don't understand and being able to express it, helping to develop those metacognitive skills for students is really important. And sometimes they don't get a lot of chances to practice that. And I scrolled by earlier, and so I'm just going to go back and mention it too. Pat Clark had a comment. I would start with a simple problem to engage them in some dialogue, because I think that comes back to that same idea that we want them to start talking about what they know, don't know, so that you can engage with them and see and understand their thinking. Awesome, great responses. Given the time that we have, let's move on to the next question, which is, let's say that you have a student who was out sick for 4 days and they come back to school on the last day of the unit. How would you talk to them about getting caught up with the work and making sure that you know that they think they can do it? And I copied that one into the chat here. Great, seeing responses come in. Awesome stuff here. I like the idea, Pat, of the calendar for having them come up with some plans for how to get caught up. I think that's a good idea. And then Greg was mentioning all the resources that are available, offering help and reinforcing that they can do it, setting those high expectations with the support that they can get it done, that you're in it together. I think that's sometimes something that freaks students out, that they have to do it all on their own. And even though Mobile CSP does have a lot of resources available that students can go through self-directed online, knowing that they can come to you or that they have check-ins or benchmarks they have to meet in order to get caught up is still a good thing. Cool. Google Classroom as an organizing tool. Yeah, flexibility with assignments and due dates is important. I totally agree. I often work with freshmen when I have Mobile CSP, and they're just freaking out about being freshmen in college, and so flexibility with them is definitely important. I have a daughter who's a senior in high school right now, too. She gets freaked out about the whole college thing, and it affects her regular coursework sometimes, and so just keeping in mind that there's all kinds of things going on for students. Yeah. Okay, our last question of the day then is, let's say that a student is playing a game on their phone and not paying attention in class. So how might you use some growth mindset feedback to help redirect them? Let me just get that question posted into the chat window here. So last one. You have a student playing a game on their phone and not paying attention in class. How might you make some connections to growth mindset and redirect them? I see some great responses in the chat here. A couple of people suggesting to students that the coursework maybe isn't challenging enough for them, and that's why they're on their phone goofing off. I think that is a very nice and polite way of calling them out for not doing the work, in the sense of making sure that students don't get turned off by your comment, and getting them back on track. So love that. Then I'm trying to see where I saw that there. The calendar, and thinking of asking questions like, have you done your portfolio reflections? Have you reviewed the self-check exercises? You know, what else is it on the list that you need to go back and revisit or you haven't done yet? Nice. You guys already have some great ideas and suggestions for mindset in the classroom here. Awesome.
You could also ask them to extend their project. Depends on what they're doing. Have you finished all your work? If they claim they have finished, you could ask them a question or two. And then how else could you modify the project? Would you buy this app in the shop? If you wouldn't buy it, what else would you do to make somebody buy it?
Yeah, great.
And then another option is to help another student.
I see there's a comment about remaining positive in the classroom. I think that can be difficult sometimes when you are seeing students playing on their phone. Does anybody have tips and tricks for that? For Ashley? I think she feels maybe she's struggling with it there.
I think it still goes to culture. It still goes to culture. I think if you build, it's something we need to work on. What I would say is, for me, I've been in my school for a long time. So they have an idea of what I need in my classroom. So, but if you build that culture, taking off the phone, I don't think it would help, because they'll hide it and they'll still use it. But challenging them on what they are doing with the phone, what app are you playing with, who wrote it? Find me the name of the person who wrote the app you're playing with. Making them feel that they have to do more. So suppose it's not challenging enough for you, what else would you do? Let it be their problem. Get them to see that you're expecting more. I think it's the same high expectation, the same kindness, the same reinforcing that you want them to make progress. When we were in Minnesota, I shared the video, You Can Learn NFM. And it's something I get my students to reflect on from time to time. Everybody starts at 0. So how much are you interacting with these concepts to enable you master them? And then so that you can create your own things and be just empowering yourself. So the more you go through those things, it's about you. It's about you getting the skills you need to get yourself ready for the future. You'll find that they'll respond.
I really like that you, in a positive way, make a connection to the student, even if they are playing an app on their phone, bringing it back to the content of the class, and then using that to help redirect them in what they're working on. That's a really nice way to do that. You folks have all had great ideas and suggestions throughout the evening here. I see the conversation is still going. I'm happy to participate in the live chat and keep it open a bit longer. If there's any big questions or concerns that you had that you want answered at the end here, please feel free to post them there. But we're reaching kind of the end of our hour here. I want to cut off the conversation though.
Jen, I want to come back to a question that Ashley had asked earlier on. She had asked, how do you break up the habit of not learning the basics with students too? And you had asked for more clarification for that. In the chat she posted, when they make assumptions on projects and jump to the end rather than going through the entire project, which means that they're missing out on the processes that were an objective with the lesson. So how do you curb that and bring them back to learning those and going through the lesson as they're supposed to?
I do ask students to, when we're going through like a tutorial and they have a question on the end, I do ask students to show me, well, where were you reading about this? Where in the video was it talking about it, so that they have to go back and point to, pieces that are related to what they have a question on, to kind of, force them to make sure that they are like using the resources they have available and looking at those steps. I'm trying to think if there's other ways that I think I ask students to like really think about the process they go through and not just jump ahead. I do have a problem with some students who feel that the tutorials are, I just look for the blocks and then make sure I have the blocks that match. And that is not a good piece either, because then they're not really learning the concepts. And so, we do some of those self-check exercises in small groups as the class to kind of check in. I'd like to do more drills with my class. That's something that I don't have a lot of time for because I have much fewer contact hours with students. But I don't know if other people have suggestions on that. I'd be happy to hear about them. I see the cell phone stuff is still going on in the chat window too. I don't know that this goes over well with students, but there is, research on multitasking and how that actually makes you more inefficient. At one point, the New York Times had a nice little simulation that you could do on distracted driving. That was a simulation of using your cell phone at the same time as trying to drive and avoid obstacles on the course. I don't know that it always thinks in for students right away, but you could try to do some things like that too. How it's just not good for learning, not good for trying to get your work done.
I think it's also a difference in style. I recruit students because they're allowed to use their phone in my class. I say to my students, this is one classroom where you're allowed to use your phone, you use your tablet, you use your headphone, you use everything. So they walk in there. So using a phone is not bad for me. It depends on where they're using it and whether they're ready to talk to me about what they're using it for. So if you tell them, if I see you using a phone, you're going to explain what you're doing and how it relates to the class, and you're having a conversation and you redirect them, it will never be a problem. But if it's a problem, unless you reteach how to use the phone in your class, they'll continue to misbehave, and then you'll continue to send to the office, and it just uses up your energy and your time. It frustrates you and frustrates the students, and may even frustrate parents. So, but if you go into discussing it, why are we teaching this? We are privileged to be doing Mobile CSP, which teaches you about your phone. You get to an, you see that the project we're doing, you don't store your data. Later, we're going to look at databases. You're going to learn more. Finish your work so we can move forward to more interesting things. So if you use it and you keep them knowing that we are going to learn more, they are going to do more, they are going to be able to create more beautiful things. The more we get done in class, the more likely we're going to get there. Phone will not be a problem. So I don't have problems with phone or behavior. I tell them I'm too old to deal with behavior. I'm in school to help them learn. So I think you need to find a way to redirect it to work instead of to office. If you take a student's phone, it frustrates them. It gets worse.
Thank you, Chinma, for sharing your experience there. All right, folks. We are at the end of our hour. Thank you for the great conversation through the chat this evening. I really appreciated having everyone share their insights, and hopefully it was helpful for you this evening. So thank you for putting up with our, not putting up with, but trying out our new chat interactivity sort of way of running the Hangout here tonight. Have a good evening, and I will see you next month.